The White House and pretty much every American, except for a few who can't really, define or defend, don't want people who are here illegally on Medicaid, who are taking money away from those who actually need it. If you are a strong working American and you have an ability to be able to work, you should not be on Medicaid.
I agree with exactly what you're saying. Then who's defending? Who's defending that? Who's saying no? I mean, this is where I go, what's the problem? I don't see a single Republican that should have a problem with anything that Beth Van Duyne is saying. Not one, nada. Okay, guys, a big, I mean, we're already halfway through the week, and I got so much stuff to talk about. We got a big week coming your way as well to round it out. The conclave began today in Rome. Normally that would just be the whole thing, but no. We got a lot of other stuff happening. Canada was here yesterday. By the way, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne of Texas. Remember Byron Donalds a couple days ago when I was with him at the White House? He said that some of the 10 best messengers in Congress, and he listed them all. Beth Van Duyne, one of them. I'm going to show her that clip for the first time today because she doesn't know it's coming. But a lot to tell you about. First, Biden was out on the BBC yesterday. Why? I don't know. Where is somebody just saying, Joe, not a good idea. No joke. Uncle Joey used to say, not a good idea to go out and do media when you're this frail. But he did. He says he has no regrets. No regrets. Smart move. Then he also says that Donald Trump, he's sort of horrified about how he's handling Putin in Ukraine. Let's just remember something. Putin invaded Crimea under Obama when Joe Biden was vice president. For 4 years, under the first Trump administration, Putin didn't do anything. He was scared of Trump. Biden comes in, failed withdrawal out of Afghanistan, and then Putin takes Ukraine. So, Joey, just a little reminder there. All this is because of you. Donald Trump's cleaning up your mess. But he got asked about the race. I told you about that. He got asked about Ukraine, did that. Then he got asked about democracy, and take a listen to this answer.
You've talked about a great threat to democracy. Do you really believe that there is a greater threat now to democracy than at any time since the Second World War?
Yes, I do. Because, I mean, look at the number of European leaders in European countries. They're wondering, well, what do I do now? I mean, what's the best route for me to take? Can I rely on the United States? Are they going to be there?
Okay. What does that have to do with democracy? Seriously, his answer to is democracy in a better or worse shape is look at European leaders and what they're doing. What? First of all, let's be honest. Why are they doing that? Well, because they've been ripping off the U.S. forever, and Donald Trump's holding them accountable, whether it's because of their lack of commitment to their NATO obligation or because of the tariffs. What does that have anything to do with democracy? Nothing, nada, zero. I mean, dude, go back to the beach. Put yourself under an umbrella and get yourself a magazine. People, Us Weekly, I don't really care. But seriously, anybody who loves this guy, just let him go. Don't do this. And tomorrow, both him and Jill are going on The View. Hey, Siri, what does really stupid look like? Yeah, that. ChatGPT is probably like, don't go. Anyway, unbelievable. Trump, though, meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday in the White House, asked how it went. This is what he had to say.
We had a great meeting today, actually, with the new Prime Minister, who's a terrific guy. And we had a very long session with JD and Marco and everybody. And it went very well. No, we had a very great meeting. And no tension. We want to do what's right for our respective peoples. And that's what's going to happen.
Look, for all the hand-wringing and the bedwetting, Trump, actually, this was a test to Carney. He didn't respect Justin Trudeau. I think this meeting went well. I think Carney did a really good job, actually. He came in, he was firm, he represented the Canadian people well, he was tough, but respectful. And that's what Trump wants to know. Are you going to be a good negotiator? Are you going to be a representative, someone I can do business with? And he likes him. It showed. I mean, look, the bottom line is we're not going to just roll over and get ripped off and subsidize everyone around the world anymore. This president's holding people accountable. We should all like that. They're getting things done. And I have this idea that I want to present to you guys in the next week or whatever. But like, when you stop listening to the noise and block it out and actually focus on what's getting done, it really is unbelievable. Like how many deals are getting made, how many businesses are investing here, how our priorities are back right. I mean, it's just amazing. And then you got great people like Steve Witkoff. He's running around the world getting hostages released, making deals. He was sworn in officially yesterday because he's a special envoy, and they changed the rules. So special envoys only can serve, I think it's like 6 months, and then they either have to go away or get sworn in, right? Or get a Senate confirmation vote, and he got it. And so congratulations to him. The president, again, he's about to head off to the Middle East. He's got a big trip ahead and teasing a big announcement that he's going to make. Take a look. This is what he had to say about the trip and the announcement.
We'll have maybe before we're going to, as you know, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. We're going to UAE and Qatar, and that'll be, I guess, Monday night. Some of you are coming with us. I think before then we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. But it'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made in many years about a certain subject, very important subject.
You got to love the wind-up. This guy markets better than anybody, right? Think about this. It'll be Monday or Tuesday, potentially Friday. It'll be very positive. It'll be on a subject that many people are talking about. But I mean, like, and even Mark Carney, the prime minister, says, I'm on the edge of my seats, Mr. President. Like, think about this. Normally people would be like, we have a press conference on Tuesday. We're going to announce whatever. The president gets everybody wound up about everything. I think it could be everything. There's talk about changing the Gulf of the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Arabia. Military actually generally recognizes that anyway. There's Mark Halperin thinks there's going to be an Abraham Accords 2 between Saudi Arabia and Israel. It could be a number of things. Anyway, it's a lot to happen. And I only say that because Congress is actually voting this week on making the Gulf of America official. Marjorie Taylor Greene carrying that bill. But also Scott Bessent, by the way, he's making a trip this weekend. And I want to be real. This to me is really interesting. He's going over to Switzerland, and just so happens the Chinese are there. What do you know? And they're actually going to meet to de-escalate this stuff. Again, with the hand wringing, the bedwetting, everyone, we're going after these countries. We're going after China. And guess what? China says, hey, let's talk. They're feeling the heat. So I think they're going to announce a work plan in Switzerland over the weekend. And they'll ultimately will lead to a leader summit. President Trump, I keep saying this, in China. Some people disagree with me. I think that's where it heads. And I think, again, what do we get? But everyone keeps worried about the chaos in the short term, whatever. Worry about the results. If we get greater market access and the Chinese stop ripping us off, whatever, that's great. Why does everyone get so upset about the tactics, the same failed tactics that diplomats have been using for decades and getting no results? Trump is a businessman. At the end of the day, you should worry about results and tell all your crazy uncles and friends and cousins and coworkers to just chill for a second and worry about the outcomes. And I think Scott Bessent's going to be over there in Switzerland. I expect something to happen over the weekend. And anyway, so that's a big deal. By the way, some other big news happening that I think is important to notice. Caroline Leavitt tweeted this out yesterday, and I think this goes without saying. Pete Hegseth has said that he's going to get trans military service members out of the military. They were allowed in under Biden because it's a readiness issue. They kick people out all the time for health reasons, medical reasons, physical standards. And if you're transitioning and or doing all this stuff and you are not medically qualified, then you go. The military is not a social experiment. And the Supreme Court yesterday restored the action that Hegseth had taken to make sure that this couldn't. It was really cool. He gave a speech down in Southcom yesterday to special operators. And I want to play you for this because listen to the focus that he talks about that he has as Secretary of Defense. Take a listen.
We are leaving wokeness and weakness behind. No more pronouns, no more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
Focus. Defending the country. That's what it's all about. And that's what his focus is. Unbelievable, huh? By the way, a point of personal privilege. Yesterday, the president made these comments about FIFA, the big soccer tournament, World Cup that's going to happen in 2026 in the United States. He named a friend of mine, a friend of the show, Andrew Giuliani, to lead the effort as the executive director on the president's task force on the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Andrew served in the first term with me. He was a special assistant in the Office of Public Liaison. He handled a lot of the sports stuff. Obviously, Andrew, a big sports fan. Great golfer, by the way, golfs with the president all the time. But it's awesome to see Andrew leading this effort. We'll get him back on the show soon and talk about this. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, a great panel, by the way. Elizabeth Mitchell, she's the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal. Sarah Gonzalez to the Blaze. And then my buddy from the morning meeting, Dan Turrentine, is going to join us as part of the panel. On Friday, Alex Bruzewicz. Now, he's the CEO of X Strategies. These are the guys that, if you read all these books about the campaign, he led the effort to get the president to do podcasts and all this independent media. I'm going to talk to him. I don't think he does a ton of interviews. In fact, I can't find one. But so this is going to be really cool, special, and unique to the show. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Before I get to Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne to talk all things big, beautiful bill and tariffs, let me just tell you about this right now. If you are the person that is running a business and you know what chaos looks like because you see it all the time at the White House, receipts from the reports that you run 5 different countries that you've been visiting, whatever. If you really are the person at the company that is in charge of finances, collecting all those receipts and everything, I got the answer for you because this is what I did. I went and got myself a ramp card. Now, this is a ramp card. It looks just like a Visa card. It says Visa on the one side. But the cool thing is you can either get the physical cards and or the virtual cards. But Ramp is a free corporate card that integrates directly into your ERP and gives you complete control over every transaction. So all these employees that are running around, you can actually manage the accounts, their expense accounts. You could set limits. It's amazing. Finance teams right now, on average, spend about 80% of their time doing tactical busy work, chasing down receipts and expense accounts. Ramp is a total game changer. It's so easy to switch over to it. It takes a few minutes to set up, and they will issue you like virtual cards almost right away. It's a white glove onboarding system that allows you, if you're the person in charge of employees, whether it's 5 employees or 5,000, Ramp is unbelievable for how you do business. Saves you a ton of time and money. Over 25,000 businesses trust Ramp, including Shopify and Boys and Girls Club of America. And they were just named #1 in spend management by G2. Right now, for a limited time, listeners of the show can get $250 in their pocket if you join Ramp. So if you're the person in charge of financing or the owner of the company, you listen to this. Just go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer. You'll get $250 just for signing up. You're welcome. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, members FDIC, terms and conditions apply. All right, guys, I've told you all the time, if you're a longtime watcher of the show, we have a lot of great guys in the show, but I tell you about another great guy. His name is Leo Grillo. He is the guy who founded Delta Rescue. If you go to deltarescue.org, you will see what I'm talking about. The videos are amazing and tell such an amazing story. Leo started Delta Rescue by rescuing one single dog, and he named the dog Delta, dedication and everlasting love to animals. That became what is now Delta Rescue. And if you go to deltarescue.org, like I said, you will see the videos. It's a world's largest no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter. Leo tells me this all the time, and I text with him. But the cool thing is what he has done is without government loans, USAID grants, all this kind of stuff is completely reliant on animal lovers like me and you. So if you're a dog, cat, horse, snake, bird lover, check out Delta Rescue and do what I did. Make a personal contribution to Delta Rescue at deltarescue.org. But more importantly, you'll see a pull-down tab up there that says, when you go to deltarescue.org, that says estate planning. Please, if you have an old 401k, a stock, you can probably get some kind of tax benefit by talking to your tax professional if you transfer it to Delta Rescue. So go to deltarescue.org, learn more about the amazing work that they do, and join me in making a personal contribution to Leo Grillo and the great work of Delta Rescue. All right, it is my pleasure to welcome in the Congresswoman from Texas and leader in so much of the messaging and policy that's going on Capitol Hill to get us a big, beautiful bill, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. Congresswoman, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be on. Good to see you.
All right, I'm going to throw a curveball your way. You didn't know I was going to start this, but I sat down with your buddy, my buddy, our buddy, Byron Donalds, the other day at the White House. And I was talking to him about strategy. You're already smiling, but I don't know that you even know where I'm going with this.
No,
I
you
talked
said
to
Byron. You gotta smile when you just hear
right.
Byron's
I know
name,
that's
right?
the thing.
Yeah.
But so I asked him. I was like, how do we communicate the Trump message? We were talking about just sort of the differences between Trump 1 and Trump 2. And one of the things that I think is interesting is I've always talked about the people in the administration who are different. But then I started to say the difference for me, like I remember we didn't have, like the Republican Congress definitely was a majority, but they weren't the allies that you guys are now to President Trump. So we were talking about how the team is different and who affected people are. And I want you to hear what he had to say. Take a listen.
On Capitol Hill, God bless everybody. But this is the time where you send out your 10 best horses to go get the job done. You know what I mean? Like you gotta
give me your 10 best horses.
Oh, on Capitol Hill?
Yeah.
Oh, Ted, Mike Lee, Beth Van Duyne out of Texas. Yeah. She's excellent, really, really good. Myself, Mace, Jim Jordan, Corey Mills out of Florida is actually better than people realize. He's really good at this. He's really, but you got to get the people who you know can go take a message and go run with it.
Byron Donald says you're one of the 10 top communicators on the Hill for the president's agenda. We're at a critical time right now. I mean, we've got to get the president's agenda through Congress. And so in all seriousness, do you think that you guys are ready and able and willing to carry the president's message to the American people? Because it's not just passing it. We got to talk about it.
No, it's absolutely right. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. We've been working on this one big, beautiful bill, for the last 2.5 years that we've been talking about it. We've been talking about what's been happening at the border, since I've gotten elected, for the last 5 years, we've been drawing attention to it. But the fact is that the American people have an idea of what's going on. I know the mainstream media does not help us. But yeah, I think November shows that no matter what they hear, they can also see. And with their own eyes, they saw what was happening with their investments, with their retirement, with egg prices and such. They saw what was happening in their communities with crime, and then the black and white difference since January. And in fact, we've got 99% less people entering our country illegally now than a year ago. That's phenomenal. The fact that you got eggs prices now that are down by over 50%. You got gas prices now that are lower than they were since COVID. Those are things that are making a difference. And while this president, you were part of the first administration, I was part of the first administration. You saw all of the things that we had to fight in order to get messages across, in order to get things passed in Congress. There's still going to be a fight that happens. And, we're all behind the scenes right now working on this one big, beautiful bill. But as we are putting it together, the president is going out there and he's fighting for working families. And I think that's something that we're all supportive of. We are looking at government spending and I think that's something that some of the fiscal hawks are having a hard time getting that message out, that yes, while we want to have these tax cuts and we recognize the fact that we have got to get the TCJA provisions extended. If we don't, every single, family in America is going to see some of the highest tax increases in our nation's history. We have to get that done. But at the same token, we can't, just relax on the fact that it's not going to cost money. And we've got to figure out not where we can slice, not where we can shave, but where we can actually cut. And I think the DOGE efforts, again, by this president, he's been leading this, looking at waste, fraud, and abuse is something we definitely are going to concentrate on. But it's very difficult for Democrats to actually defend where they're identifying these waste, fraud, and abuse. But they are just attacking the messenger. And unfortunately, they just can't seem to get their eye off the ball. It's constantly attacking President Trump or his allies. And, in that case, it was Elon Musk. We're doing our best to get those messages out. We have a very strong message that the American people support. And we just got to keep making sure that we've got the microphone to do it.
All right. I want to get to the bill, to spending, to taxes. I mean, so much that you just brought up, DOGE. I mean, all that. Before I do that, you mentioned, you and I both worked in that first administration, you over at HUD for Dr. Ben Carson. I talked to the current Secretary of HUD. I'm always intrigued by this. I don't know that everyone, but I asked Byron the same question, but like, what to you is different, better about Trump 2 than Trump 1?
I think Trump, one, was coming in and not recognizing the fact, very similar to what Dr. Carson experienced. You think you're putting together a team and everybody's on the same page and you all have the same goal. And I think he recognizes that that's not actually the case all the time in politics. So I think the clear difference is that he has had now over 8 years to devise a strategy, to put together a team that works well together. They all understand what the game plan is and they're all pushing for it. I think he's also had an opportunity to be able to prove himself. His first 4 years in office, when he first started, there were still some Republicans who were saying, is he really a Republican or is he a Democrat? He supported, Democrats in the past. What's he really doing? I think, look, he's been very clear. He wants to get things done. It's a very short period of time to get those things done. And he has got a plan and he's moving forward on it like breakneck speed. And he's got a Congress now that's willing to work with him on that, recognizing the path. He's got the support of the American people.
Yeah. So you and I are on the same page on this because I think people writ large, the people who he brought in, the people who kept away, and the team around him, including you guys in Congress, is so different and more committed to the agenda. It's just, it's a totally different environment. But let's get down to brass tacks, as they say, and actually talk about. I mean, you brought this up. The American people are going to judge us by results, and getting this big, beautiful bill over the finish line is important to his agenda. It's important, I think, to the House majority. So let's just start with a broad question. Where does it stand right now?
Well, right now we're still having debates, on coming up with our draft. And a lot of the debates have to do with how much to spend. We got a $37 trillion debt. We're spending more to service our debt now than we are on our defense. It's not sustainable. If people are really concerned and interested in carrying programs like Social Security or Medicare, those programs are going to take an automatic hit if we do not get our spending under control. It won't be a congressional vote. It will automatically happen. So in order to save those programs, we have to make sure that we're being very fiscally responsible. These tax cuts, all of them are going to have costs associated with them. But the same token, we need to be focused on growing the economy. And that is, I think, where you're seeing things like the small business, the 199A pass through, the tax cuts on the tax rebates on R&D, research and development, making sure that we've got innovation that's happening in our country. We are prioritizing those. But all of those are going to have to be met with other kind of cuts in spending cuts. But the fact is that you saw how much we added during COVID. We are doing things that the federal government should never have invested in. We have hired people, we have contracted with people that we had no business extending that. States are great at what they do. And unfortunately, the federal government getting its hands on everything and using COVID as an excuse to do it was just poor managing, poor planning, and it has really been devastating, I think, to our economy. So what we're trying to do is re-privatize our economy. If you look at the job numbers that just came in the last quarter, they were phenomenal because 100% of the job growth was on the private sector side. It wasn't government jobs, which we saw during the Biden administration. And getting those costs back, getting those investments back on the private sector side. The fact is that through these policies and through just executive orders alone, and the focus that Trump has had on growing the economy, you've seen private investment from businesses of $5 trillion. You also have some countries, the UAE included, that have promised up to $3 trillion already in investments. That's where we need to concentrate. But again, the investment in our country, we cannot grow our way out of this. We also have to be fiscal hawks and looking at the spend.
So totally agree. That sounds very common sense, smart, Republican. I mean, okay, check.
But agreeing where you're going to have those cuts is the difficult part.
As they like to say, there's the rub. So where's the rub? I mean, you read the stuff. You've got people that are very concerned about Medicaid cuts, to which I've argued, I don't think the president will go for them anyway. So why are we that should be a non-starter? But what is the rub? Where is it that the argument? I mean, because again, I think you take those top points that Beth Van Duyne just laid out, and people go, "Oh, I'm on board." But clearly, there's pushback. I think not just among House colleagues, but clearly the Senate doesn't want to do this. And I kind of go why are you a Republican if you don't want to reduce spending? So is the devil in the detail? Where's the rub that's holding this up from moving quicker?
Everybody has 750,000 people or more that they represent, and everybody has a different district. So if you're looking at Medicaid, I disagree. I think the White House has been very clear that they want to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. The White House, and pretty much every American, except for a few who can't really define or defend, don't want people who are here illegally on Medicaid, who are taking money away from those who actually need it. If you are a strong working American and you have an ability to be able to work, you should not be on Medicaid.
So
If you're
who
between
disagrees with that?
19 and
Who-
55, I'm sorry?
But that's what I agree. Like, again, this is why Byron Donald sung your praises. I agree with exactly what you're saying.
But I
Then
think the White House-
but
I think the
who's
White House-
defending that? Who's saying no? I mean, this is where I go. What's the problem? I don't see a single Republican that should have a problem with anything that Beth Van Duyne is saying. Not one, nada.
We represent different districts. So districts in New York are going to have a different case, and they're more sensitive to the Medicaid. Salt tax. That's probably a really good one that's been very public. You've got the Salt Caucus that represent areas where they are, the constituents are getting raped by their local and state governments tax-wise, but they get to take those off their federal taxes, which means that states like Florida and Texas are having to make up for it. Now you've got people who represent those districts in New York and in California that want to decrease or want to increase the cap that was put on salt back in 2017 as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Those are discussions that we're having. One side is going to argue that, look, red states shouldn't have to make up for the bad decisions of blue states. And the blue states are saying, well, we've got representatives. We represent constituents that are fed up with it and they need some tax relief. Those are conversations that we're having. The Inflation Reduction Act, which let's just call it was the Inflation Act. But every single Republican voted against the IRA, but they have provisions in there that are helpful to some states and some districts. So while I'm willing to push everything back on the table and get some of the pay-fors from the IRA, you've got other members who are saying, well, we've got businesses that invested in this technology specifically because of the IRA. You can't change the rules halfway down the field. So those are the discussions that we are having right now. But I'm with you. We need to cut. We don't need to trim, because we have seen the overblown spending and what it's gotten us. And the fact is that we're arguing nickels now, but those dollars are going to go down the drain, and we're not even going to have a control over it if we don't start tailing in those spending now.
So the way that I think it's a pretty obvious read is you've got some members, and I get it, like the Mike Lawlers that worry about that state and local tax deduction because New York is getting their governor. They have a blue, a leftist governor. And I get why, like, it's someone like a Mike Lawler cares, or a Jeff Van Drew in New Jersey, or you brought up California. I get it. They care about those. They also care about how much is Medicare is dealing with. Beyond that, though, and then you've got Chip Roy from your state who thinks that we're not doing enough. I get it. This is not letting, but the problem I think is actually bigger, which is the Senate. The Senate doesn't want to do as much. And so the concern is are you guys I just play this out for me. Do you think that you guys come to a deal and then you hold firm against the Senate? I mean, if you had to look into a crystal ball, how does this play out and when?
There's a number of different ways that this could play out. One, you're going to have, the fiscal hawks in the House hold this bill and say, until you get these cuts, we're not going to move. And we're not going to get it out of the House. Now, the president could come in and say, we have to get this moving. And then there could be some kind of a compromise struck. Now, that compromise, the Senate probably will not accept. So are they going to come back and bring us another bill? What I have seen in the last 5 years, which is very frustrating, is we have these machinations between the House and the Senate. We put ourselves up against the deadline, and then we end up passing basically a Democrat bill to be able to get everybody on board. I would hate to see that happen. You have got a very narrow majority in both, the House and the Senate. But we've got the will to be able to move forward on a Republican conservative bill. If we don't, if we're unable to get our votes in the House, if we're unable to get the votes in the Senate, you might see that you've got a Ways and Means chairman who is willing to work with the Democrats to make sure that the TCJA provisions are extended. Because like I said, if we don't extend those provisions, you're going to see the largest tax increase on our American families in our nation's history, and we can't afford that to happen.
And I think that's the big takeaway, right? If we don't pass these tax cuts that are going to expire, everybody gets a tax increase.
Yeah. So we are doing what we can. I mean, we have met for I can't tell you how many hours in Ways and Means. We're still going to be meeting this week. We're going to be meeting again next week. We're going to be doing hopefully a markup, anytime soon. The leadership has been very clear. Johnson, President Trump have been very clear. They want to have a bill out by Memorial Day. They want to have it on the president's desk by 4th of July. There's a reason why those deadlines are important. We cannot wait until the end of the year when these tax provisions are set to expire to give some kind of security to the business community. The fact that the TCJA tax cuts expired at the end of this year actually meant that we did not see about $800 billion of investment in our country because businesses took their foot off the gas as far as investing because they didn't know if they could count on these tax cuts or not. So that's further investment in our economy that we want to have happen. So waiting until the last minute means that you're losing out on investments, and I don't think that's a good thing. So we want to have these sooner rather than later. And with all the conversation going on with tariffs and what's happening around the world, it's added security to our job creators. That look, at least you've got a solid tax policy to be able to move on, and that's the message that we need to be able to send.
The president's always talked about like no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, whatever. Where do those other provisions stand? I mean, are those priorities for the Ways and Means Committee?
So obviously, this is something that the president has, campaigned on. This is something that the president, won on. We were working families definitely support this. We're trying to give the president as many wins as we possibly can, understanding as well. One of the things that he had said in the State of the Union is he also wants to get to a balanced budget. So I think we are working the numbers right now, recognizing the fact that these are, very, very large, hundreds of billions of dollars in costs, and we just want to make sure that we have the pay for it. But again, this is something that the American people are supportive of, and we're trying to figure out as many wins within the tax code as possible for this president and for the American people.
You mentioned Doge and Elon Musk and some of these things, and I think there's a lot. Like I love what is happening, but Elon's getting ready to start to phase out. And I guess the question is, one, do you think that like a lot of the stuff that has been exposed is going to be actually addressed? That they will cut it, eliminate it, et cetera. You guys will codify that in law, whether that's actual waste or inefficiencies or like cutting funding for PBS and NPR. And is there going to be an effort and a continuation after Elon leaves to make sure that this just doesn't just die on the vine? Is everyone fired up, to keep doing this? Because I feel like if it wasn't for Elon, I don't know that we'd be here.
Well, you worked in the White House, so you had probably a little bit different experience than I did working in the belly of the beast at HUD, an agency where lawsuits and the federal employee unions were so strong. I think a lot of this is going to end up in the courts. I want to make sure that we've got the backbone, even, once this president is gone, to be able to hold the line and making sure that people are getting back to work. All that stuff's going to end up in courts. I have been trying for a number of years now to get a bill passed through that would make two bills, actually. One would have third-party audits on our agencies to make sure that GAO is not doing its job right now. They are not searching for waste, fraud, and abuse. So having third-party audits automatically on these agencies, I think, is key to be able to make sure that the Doge effort continues well beyond this presidency. The second is looking at the additional regulatory burdens that get put on our business community. $1.8 trillion in excess costs from regulations alone over the Biden administration. I've got a bill right now that would make these agencies, one, have to identify the cost of their regulations, which they don't right now. But two, would be able to take that cost and make sure that they are cleaning house, because it would have to be budget negative or budget neutral, meaning they can't keep layering on. So if they want to add a regulation, they're going to have to look at what regulations they are taking off the table that are adding troublesome, dollar burdens. Then that's basically codifying President Trump's efforts. For every one regulation you add, you got to take away two. But I'm looking at it in dollar amounts. And I think, forcing the agencies to have to clean house and go back and look at the provisions that they put in place that weren't doing the job, that have just aged, that are duplicative, is going to be important. So codifying what this administration is trying to get is going to be key to moving forward. Because let's face it, talking about regulations is not sexy. It wasn't until you got Elon Musk talking about it and Vivek that it became sexy, but it's going to lose the focus of the American public, especially if they start losing some of these cases in the courts. But having an effort like looking at and making sure that the regulations are getting trimmed down automatically, and looking at these third-party audits, I think it's really important moving forward.
You were a mayor, you worked at HUD. When you I always wonder when you're having these conversations with your colleagues, I mean, you can draw on a lot more experience than a lot of them can, because you can say, to your point about regulations and agencies, like, I've done it, I've been there, or I was a mayor, I know what it's, I mean, like, how much, like, I always wonder about those interpersonal discussions when somebody's talking about a policy and Beth Van Duyne sitting there saying to herself, okay, I don't, this isn't some theoretical discussion. Like, I know what it's like to be at an agency and how these regulations impact people doing business. Like, do those things actually come up in your discussions with people about policy?
Well, a lot of us have to, look, all of us are drawing on different levels of experience, whether or not it's the private sector experience, and you've faced, some of these tax hurdles, directly, or it's working for a bureaucracy and recognizing the fact that the bureaucracy will protect its own. And no matter who is in office, they're going to go ahead and do what they want anyway, and trying to hold them accountable is very hard. So yeah, we all have different levels of experience, and you talk about my experience as a mayor, my experience at HUD. Yeah, I have a lot of experience working with bureaucracy and recognizing the fact that you just got to cut straight to the point. You don't have a whole lot of time. You've got a certain number of rocks in your pocket. If you're trying to build this path, you cannot waste any time. And I think, one of the major differences between this administration and last is you recognize how quickly 4 years goes by, and how long of this cycle is going to take to get some of these changes to happen, whether or not, it's acts of Congress, acts of the court. So I have been very clear in our conversations, and whether it's in Ways and Means or in small business, about the importance of cutting regulations, the importance of not having these federal strangleholds on local communities, and the importance of state rights. And the states having the ability to be able to dictate how they move forward. But we have a lot of disparate voices in Congress. I think it's a good thing. But amongst Republicans, people wonder why we are not always all on the same page. And I think it's because we really do bring thoughtfulness to our conversations and recognize the fact that we really do represent different districts.
As you were talking about this, I was thinking about, you mentioned the word like pay fors, like, and the president's been very clear that these tariffs are bringing in a ton of money. So, when you go back to your district and you hear from business owners, how does this playing out for someone like you? You're talking to businesses that probably are dealing with them. You're talking to consumers, and then you're also looking at it from like a budgetary standpoint, like how much money. So how are the tariffs playing in your world, in terms of both revenue and then the impact of people in Texas?
It's very difficult to put, if you're going to use a tariff as a pay for, it's very difficult in this environment because you don't know what number that's going to be. A lot of the tariffs that the president has thrown out, he's taken back, he has paused, he's put on pause. And it's really being used as a negotiating strategy to bring these countries to the table to say, look, we want to have free trade, but it needs to be fair trade. So we can't really put a number in that the tariffs are, a revenue number that the tariffs are generating. When I'm talking to businesses in my district, they're having a hard time right now. We had a builders roundtable, a home builders roundtable last time I was home, and we had about 15 people at the table talking about, look, we're trying to build homes. We have people moving here from California, from Chicago. We have a lot of growth and we have a lot of need for housing. But with these tariffs, it's making it very difficult. We've got businesses who have invested, and now they may have some manufacturing in China, and now they're struggling to try to figure out how they're going to bring that back on shore, or how they're going to put that in a different country that has a more favorable trade in tariff relationship with the U.S. But it's happening at breakneck speed. And that is something that they are struggling to overcome. They don't know if it's going to be long term or not. I think the more guarantees of security that we can give to businesses, the better off they are. When they know what the rules are, they can play by them. But we change them so often that it's very difficult. They're looking at long-term, 10-year, 20-year investments in these businesses, and we're changing the rules every 2 years.
Yeah, but do they get the goal, right? In other words, I get what I've said to folks is President Trump politically could have done the easy thing, which is just say, all right, here's certainty. You're going to keep getting screwed in terms of market access into India or the UK or to Japan or or whatever, or I can fight. To your point, you said it, that he's using these as a negotiating tool. If those other countries don't think he's serious, they won't negotiating with him. So I get it. It's this balance of hopefully it's not long term. If we get a great deal, Scott Bassett said that there's like 50 countries that they're
right.
So what do you just tell them, hey guys, I get it. It's going to be a little bumpy for a while.
That's the case. I mean, look, we have gotten into this mess because of decades and decades of neglect of letting these countries, especially China, walk all over us. And so I think they understand as Americans why this is important. But some of these small businesses that are basically trying to hang on now and have very fragile margins that are trying to hang on now after experiencing what they did during COVID, competing with a lot of large, multinational corporations, they're the ones who are having the hardest time. And yes, I tell them to hold on, and this will all be over soon. But the question is whether or not they've got enough gas in the tank to be able to stay in business. And some of them are really struggling. And we are trying to promise them, look, we have a president who understands. You've got a Congress that understands a lot of tax policies are going to be important. And we're going to try to make it as easy for you as possible on a tax policy. So while you may be experiencing pain on the tariffs until we get those negotiated, we're going to try to help you on the tax policy is another reason why we need to get this bill passed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that tax policy is critical because that's the one thing that not only helps businesses, but if you want to incentivize behavior, whether that's onshoring or manufacturing in general, then having a better tax policy than another country to me would be in creating a better business environment would be smarter. When he talks about stuff like tariffs on films, does that affect people businesses in Texas, or is that a California thing?
He said he wants to save a dying Hollywood. I don't know that I agree with that. I'm fine to let Hollywood die. I've seen the crap that's come out of that industry, and you're looking for like jewels in a field of poo. But I'm okay with letting Hollywood die and seeing where it's rising, seeing where you're getting that industry in other areas of the country. I think it also, if we're looking at taxing imports, we also have to be very careful because I think that's one industry where we make a lot more money on exports than we do on than we have in importing films. But I think that you've seen a lot, especially since COVID, and especially since this whole idea of parents now recognizing the wokeness and how it's affecting their kids and no longer being willing to pay for those movies. I think you're seeing a lot of private industries pop up all around the country, not just in Hollywood. So
I agree. You know what? I don't want to save Hollywood. I love some of the stuff that's coming out of like Angel Studios or Brave Books, whatever. Yeah, I'm with you. Why are we saving bad? Because these guys are making horrible content. Before I let you go, I got to say the one issue that I'm really intrigued by somebody from Texas's take on is, and you mentioned this at the beginning a little, but I just want you to I know that you're closer to like the Dallas area, but like, do people in Texas in general feel the difference of what's happened with immigration and border security?
Absolutely.
Is it something that's talked about when you're out? I mean, because I just don't get, we always talk about every state's a border state, right? But I will be honest, as someone who lives in Virginia, like, I don't think people are walking up to me and like, wow, I totally see the difference on the border. But you guys in Texas are always at the forefront of this, in Arizona, et cetera. Is this like something that comes up when you're talking to constituents and people, or is it because you're a little more insular, it's less so?
No, we're right on the 35 corridor. So, it is absolutely, we're one of the largest cities, one of the largest areas, fourth largest metroplex in the country. So we are a magnet for that kind of activity. When you talk to the FBI 4 years ago, they were telling me that they had actually more drug cartels and illegal organizations that were having activities in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we absolutely felt it. And now, given the fact all the work that Tom Homan is doing and Kristi Noem, and we are trying to support him to make sure that these deportations can continue, we're definitely feeling it in our communities. And I don't think that I've been to any kind of roundtable business tour or meeting with constituents where it has not been mentioned. People are very grateful for what they see in the communities and the decrease in crime. And look, this, I could speak directly about this issue as a former mayor that had a fantastic relationship with her local law enforcement. And we had partnerships with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement that concentrated on deporting criminal illegal aliens before it was popular. We got criticized. We got criticized from all across the country, but our community really appreciated it because we saw a direct decrease in our crime. We became one of the 5th safest cities in the country. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by enforcing your laws, by having those partnerships at the local, state, and federal level, and you absolutely feel it in your communities. And I think, whether or not you're in Texas or whether or not you are in Illinois, whether or not you're in Idaho, you are feeling the results of an administration that is taking our border security, safety seriously, and is enforcing our laws. So it's something that we're feeling in Dallas, and we are very, very happy that Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, and President Trump are looking at this.
Awesome. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, appreciate your insight. I love your take on this, and I'm with you. Like, let's not save Hollywood. Thanks for being with us today.
Great to see you, Sean.
Good
Thank you.
You bet. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Today is a great day to go to my newsletter, SeanSpicer.com, and sign up. Do me a favor, spread the word. Share it with 5 people and say, hey, it's free to sign up. I wanted to do this. Or there's a VIP subscription you could do for yourself or gift it to someone. Remember, Mother's Day is coming up. No one's mother would love anything less than a subscription to SeanSpicer.com to be a VIP. I appreciate that. Remember to sign up, hit subscribe and notification buttons on this channel so that you get all of the latest episodes. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.